Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The ReQuest. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my wonderful co-host, Austin the Day Ghost. And today, Austin and I are going to talk about a movie that was requested by Super Billy on Patreon. Thanks very much to you. This is a movie that came out in 2001 and is an HBO film. This was an American-British conglomeration. And Austin, I told you wrong. I thought this was a BBC thing, but it's not. But it was a...
It's like a mix, isn't it?
It was
Isn't it BBC and HBO?
I couldn't find any information on whether the BBC was actually involved in this, but I know it was a joint British thing, so maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what I thought was BBC and HBO, but I could be wrong.
Because the BBC has 3 channels, and they're just BBC 1, 2, and 3. That's all they have there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I'm probably joking.
Government controlled.
I don't know. I've never been. I've never been to the UK. I don't know how that works. But anyway, thanks a lot for joining us. If you're watching live, thanks for watching after the fact if you're doing that. If you've seen this movie, or even if you haven't, and you have anything you'd like to contribute during the show, some information that we don't know already, or your personal feelings on any aspect of the film, feel free to put those in as we discuss. This is a short film. It's a simple film. There is a lot of substance and some things that we could really sink our teeth into and dive in if we knew the film better than we do. I don't know how long this review is going to be, Austin. I never want to say this one's going to be short, because that never ends up happening when I say that. It always ends up being, a 50-minute plus review. But that could happen this time. I'm not totally sure, because there's a part of me that wants to just give real general impressions of this, and then say, if you've not seen it, go watch it. But there is also some interesting discussion and analysis that we could do as well. So let's just kind of play it by ear and see where things go. Austin, I told you wrong on another thing too, originally, because I read...
I thought you were going to mention when you first said
I'm going to mention this too. I read Super Billy's message wrong, and I thought that he said this was a really horrifying, I almost said mortifying, that's the wrong word, a really horrifying,
horrifying, electrifying
horror film that was about how depraved humanity can be. And I read his message wrong. What he was saying is that it shows how depraved humanity can be in a more compelling way than some horror films. That's what he was trying to say. And so I went into this expecting a really difficult movie to get through in a different way than it might be for some people. And then I also, about 5 minutes in, had this weird experience with it where I realized, I think I've seen this before. A long time ago, or at least, I'm not sure if I'd seen the whole film, or if maybe a clip was played in a college course, or something, I'm not sure, but bits of this were coming back to me as I watched it. So it was a very strange experience. Anyway, Austin, would you go ahead and give us a brief synopsis? It shouldn't be too difficult, and then we'll get into how we felt about this film.
Okay, so Conspiracy is a movie about British Nazis who are just played by British people, but none of them do German accents. That's kind of funny.
See, I came into this going, there's no way we can have any fun at all with this topic, and of course Austin finds a way to make a joke right away.
So they come together to have a meeting, and then they discuss... No, they discuss what to do about the Jewish problem in Nazi Germany, and they're kind of just working around laws and whatnot of what to do with them. But it is essentially an entire movie where they are at a board meeting and they discuss things.
Well, that's what's interesting.
And it's filled with a bunch of famous people.
Yeah.
And one of Tom Hiddleston's first movies.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because you'll recognize actors in movies, and it won't occur to you like just how early it is in their career. Sometimes, like I guess he's pretty young here, but I didn't think of that. And then there are actors that just kind of disappear because of the roles they're playing. I mean, it's set up in such a way where everybody you have a lot of people in SS outfits, and everybody kind of looks the same intentionally, if that makes any sense.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, and British people are all like related, so like they all just kind of there's like a typical look where you're like, yeah.
What's interesting about what you're saying, that it's just a hour and a half dull board meeting, is that it's so routine, and when you're really paying attention to the substance of the meeting, and obviously how atrocious everything is with what's being discussed, with the final solution to the Jewish problem, it's almost more awful in that way because of the perspective of the majority of these characters who of course are based on real life people, some of which got more or less pretty close to the actual, from what little reading I've had time to do on this, to the actual characters in real life, and some that they had to take some creative liberties with in order to create more drama than I suspect would have actually been at that meeting.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess I should just get the kind of elephant out of the room and say I'm a big history guy. Like I really like history stuff. 5 minutes into this movie, I was like, okay, I'm like, I don't know if I'm just not in the mood for this kind of a thing, but like I'm kind of drifting.
Maybe this
I'm
isn't a thing that you
drifting.
start at 2 in the morning, Austin.
But yeah, I don't know. Like for me, like I mean, I guess it did feel like a boardroom meeting. I did get that aspect, and I agree with you. Like I think a lot of the ideas
But I
of what
think
they're
that's
talking
what's
about.
so messed up about it.
Oh no, of course. But I think it's like it's more interesting to me on paper than
Sure.
it is in practice, where I'm like everything they're talking about is really interesting. And like I said, maybe it was just, because sometimes you watch a movie, you're not in the right mood or something, it just doesn't hit you right.
Well,
I think we've all had movies
we
like
come
that.
into these things as blind as possible, so it's not like you were mentally prepared for
Mm.
this kind of a thing. I had the exact 180 opposite experience to you. Usually,
Oh, interesting.
when I sit down to do these requests, I have to do them in a couple of sittings, because I usually have to start late, particularly when it's a thing like this that I'm not going to watch around my kids probably. And I didn't have any difficulty in getting through this, where I was starting to have fatigue, and I was kind of nodding off. And I have that even with things that I find really compelling sometimes, where it's just I'm that tired. And maybe yesterday I just wasn't, but I know I was. You know what I mean? Like I really perked up with this one. I don't know. It kind of. I think it was effective with me in the feelings that it was trying to elicit, where I found it really easy to put myself in, as well as I guess I could, in the shoes of somebody who might be a fly on the wall. I look at this as like a fly on the wall kind of movie, where it's not, for the most part, except for the couple of times that Kenneth Branagh's character, the main general, will take somebody outside and basically say, you can read between the lines, like toe the line, or you're next, like the same thing we're going to do to the Jews, we're about to do to you. But besides the couple times that happens, where we're privy to kind of a private moment, I even kind of wondered how much we needed those moments, because it was sort of, yeah, it's a movie, so there's got to be like subterfuge. I was kind of okay with just like it's a tape recording essentially. You know what I mean? Where like you listen to the minutes of this meeting in real time, and that's, by the way, what the whole thing is based on. Is the minutes of this meeting were found. It was you find out at the end, and it's bookended with this because we're told that this is supposed to happen, but ostensibly the stenographer's notes are supposed to be thrown away at the end. Like everybody, there's not supposed to be any record of this. Where like the notes are made so that the people at the top can look at them, and then it gets tossed away. And notes actually did survive, or at least as I understand it, there wasn't supposed to be any record of this. Maybe the one that did survive was the only one that was supposed to. But just on one watch of this, and I said yesterday, I actually watched this the day before, and so from what I'm remembering from the movie, I think everything was supposed to get tossed away. But anyway, so there's not a verbatim word for word script of this movie. Wouldn't it have been cool if we had that, and if this movie could have been like not interpreted at all, but simply words spoken that were on a page written down by a stenographer that took it word for word? And in fact, I assume that there were meetings like that where somebody did write out an entire transcript, because obviously World War II buffs, history buffs, are able to get their hands on a whole lot of information about a whole lot of meetings and memos and things that took place. And this thing is fascinating because of how little information there was supposed to be about it, and how little we have in comparison to some other things. But anyway, it's just an interesting piece because it's not just based on real life events, but we have the stenographer's notes of more or less everything that happened in that meeting.
Hmm. Yeah, no, all that stuff like is really interesting. Like I said, I think this is a movie where like everything, like if you were to describe this to me, I'd be like, "Oh, this is awesome! Like this is probably like one of the coolest movies ever made." And just for
Yeah,
whatever reason, watching it, it was like, like I'm just kind of bored.
that's
But
really
like
interesting.
I love history. Like I love like all that stuff. I even like like all the actors in this. I don't know, it just for whatever reason it just hit me in the that wrong spot, I guess.
So do you feel, I mean, maybe you just can't articulate it. Do you feel like somehow the approach was wrong? Was it performances?
I don't know because like I think all of that was fine. Like everything was fine. It was just there was something about it where I was like, I'm just not really engaged.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, I wonder how you'd feel on a second watch.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking like because I've also heard nothing but praise for this movie, so that's why I wonder if it was maybe just like that wrong time where I was like I watched this maybe like just wasn't the right time and like wasn't in the right mood. I don't know.
Autism is unstoppable. There, the comments says one C conference. Well, I have to read the handle. One C conference is a much better
I
film.
know, but I was trying not to laugh about that the whole time. The second I saw it, and then you said it,
I've
made me laugh.
Anyway, yeah, I've not heard of that, and would be interested now that I've seen this to look at that. I guess what I was getting at earlier is, like I said, unlike you, for whatever reason, I was able to kind of put myself in the shoes of a person who might stumble upon the information in the day that the Nazis were going to go this far, because I found myself roped into it, and I don't know. Maybe sometimes I'm too impressionable or whatever. I don't think I was with this. Where I was able to kind of momentarily forget what I knew, kind of, about what happens at the end of World War II, and what happens in the concentration camps, and with the gas chambers and those things. Were a couple times in this movie I found myself going, oh yeah, like this is common knowledge now. And if you have like a modern day, I mean, I don't know what it's like now, but when I was in junior high, like 20 years ago, there's a whole section in history class in like 7th or 8th grade about the Holocaust, and it gets very detailed and very graphic. And I don't know if you had that education, Austin.
So, my grade 10 history class, which is when we did the World Wars,
Okay.
um, we did like 8 weeks on World War One, and we were like, oh man, like we're like really rushing to get World War One finished because we're like running out of time. And then because of that, we had 4 days to do World War Two. So
Oh
it's like, oh crap.
no.
And the way Canada teaches this stuff is the worst way that you can teach it
Oh.
because Canadian schools teach it based on Canada's involvement in the World Wars. So you obviously get the broader strokes of like the war because we're not like a big part of the war. But when you get into
I mean, I
details,
assume you guys get in at the same time we do, right?
no, before because
Oh,
you
is
guys
it
don't
really?
play it. Yeah,
I'm
no,
I'm
because
not like I'm not like a history buff, and I'm not a scholar when it comes. I mean, I find World War II really interesting, and I probably know more about that than I know about a lot of other periods. But that's not saying a lot. I'm not a scholar or anything.
yeah, no, because we don't technically divorce from the UK until the 80s.
Okay,
So the second they come into the war, we're swept in.
there you go.
Um, yeah, so our history on that in school is mainly just focusing on our involvement. Just not the way to teach it. So, but I was also the kid that was like, I'm really interested in history, so I did my own reading on
So you
stuff.
go off on your own. Yeah, we had to
Yeah.
read a lot of like, first person accounts and Diary of Anne Frank and those kinds of things. I actually, I'm glad I remembered to mention this. I actually was in a production of the Diary of Anne Frank when I was in junior high, and I just come in at the very end of the play, but it's like the most kind of gut wrenching scene. I was the lead Nazi in that play, so like I had to wear an outfit like with a swastika and all of that, and
Hmm.
it was very uncomfortable, and it was kind of difficult work to do. But I was, this is in ninth grade. It's like really heavy stuff. Obviously,
Yeah.
having to, try to be compelling and pretend like you hate a whole group of people and like want to see them genocided. Like it was nuts to ask a kid to do that. Um,
No, that's a big thing.
but then I also really appreciated that we were allowed to deal with that kind of substantive material, and that it wasn't sugar coated, and we didn't pretend like it didn't happen or kind of gloss over. Like I feel like it
It's an
was.
important part of history.
It is, yeah, and to let kids like, I mean, you could say like we're letting kids grow up too fast, in a way with that, but I really appreciated being treated like an adult with all of that,
Hmm.
and in some ways, I think maybe we went a little bit too far actually in the emphasis on the latter part of the Holocaust. Only in not to say that we should have lessened the impact of that for the kids or whatever, or that that wasn't obviously one of the main things you should focus on with the war. I'm not saying that, but for the longest time I got the sense that what was happening with the Jews was much more common knowledge in Germany because and in the rest of the world, because we focus so hard on the stuff that this movie is talking about that hasn't even happened yet, some of it. So like when I think of Holocaust, I think the gas chambers and the mass shootings and all of those things, and obviously some of that was already going on and was going on secretly, but some of it they're in that conference they're suggesting, and it turns out just telling everyone at this meeting, this is what's going to happen, we're going to do this under the pretense of we want your opinion on what we should do. We've actually already decided what it's going to be, and you all need to sign off on it. And so that was so that hit me kind of hard here, where I had to kind of like, I guess I knew that finally, but like I said, for a lot of years I didn't realize just how late in the game some of this stuff came, which again doesn't lessen the impact of it. But I guess I'm just saying that I didn't have a full perspective of the timeline of the war. And like, in my head for the longest time, World War II is like, the early 40s, like 41, 42. That's when all the important stuff happens. I always forget about the rest of it. And so watching this, I had to be kind of reminded again, like, here's how late in the game some of this stuff was.
Hmm. No, for sure. I should mention, since you mentioned that play thing that you were in,
Yeah.
you know the In Flanders Fields poem? Uh, no. It was
That
like a
rings a
big,
bell, I think. I'm
it's
not
a big
sure.
famous, yeah, it's a big famous poem from the Second World War. The guy who wrote it, his house is like 10 minutes down the road.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, and it's like preserved, and you can walk in, and uh, they got like all the
No,
stuff.
Daniel Davis, I'm well aware that World War II started well before 1941. I'm just saying that I had a period in my history where it was difficult I had to keep reminding myself of that because we focused in school so hard on really those last couple of years.
Yeah, like you're like
Or the
44, 45.
last, 3 or 4 years, I guess, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think that's the main thing that they kind of talk about in schools anyways, is that kind of big stuff.
So, like I said, I found this movie really compelling. The issues, if I have any, with it are after I've watched it and done like 10 minutes of cursory research, right? Like while I'm watching it, I'm real sucked in, and it's interesting getting the politics of what's happening at the time, where Germany and the SS are pretending like things are going better with the war than they actually are, and you're seeing a lot of breakdown in the you know command structure, and or I guess just communication, right? Of like things are actually a lot more dysfunctional than you'd think they were, and this gives you kind of a glimpse of how Germany managed to lose this war when they were when they were managing so well before, and people wondered how in the world they could even be beaten. The priorities are so insane and out of whack that once you get the full perspective of it, you're like, well, of course they lost.
Yeah, no, and some
Kind
of
of.
the stuff like between them's really cool. Like I really like the moments between Colin Firth's character and Kenneth Branagh, where he's like, "Hey, like I wrote these laws, and you guys
Yeah.
aren't honoring them, and instead are just like you're putting down subjective material where it's like, oh, this person looks Jewish, so I guess that counts."
Yeah. All of
Yeah.
the, I mean, I was really, I can't say enjoyed, but I was fascinated by the absurdity of uh, all of the questioning of like how much Jewish blood you have to have before you count as inferior, and the the notion of like trying to force like hundreds of thousands of people to divorce. That was a thing I'd never thought about before, and just like
Yeah.
the absolute preposterous nature of some of the things that were suggested that would have to be done to give Hitler what he wants in making sure that there were no Jews left anywhere in their modern world. And then, you have that bit toward the beginning where we're talking about where we might keep attempting to put Jews before it becomes really clear that what we're really talking about is genocide. And there's no room left in all these countries, including America, and like they're not taking them and all of that. And then there's also a part where pretty early on where Kenneth Branagh's character has kind of a offhanded like joke about it not being too long before maybe we'll be operating out of the White House. And I'm thinking, okay, so at the same time as they're kind of going through the motions and trying to sound civilized, I guess to just not freak out all these people in this room right off, we're also it's also really clear that what these SF officers are after, and Hitler at the very top, of course, is clearly, as we all know, of course, world domination, and so there would be no Jewish person anywhere left in the world. It's not just get them out of Germany, get them out of Europe. It's get them out. Like, let's not have them. So it starts at the beginning in this, like, this pretense of being civilized. And I think the thing that I was latching onto most, Austin, is this notion of how like governments with too much power manipulate language, and the repeated line
Evacuation.
well, yeah, and the thing about how words mean things, and that keeps coming back. Like, it's important. That's the repeated line. It's important to know what words mean. Yeah, and so it starts with the word evacuation, and maybe the best for me, kind of the most chilling, like, just stop you in your tracks moment is when one of the officers, and I'm not familiar enough with the history to remember anybody's names, but one of the officers says, wait, did I evacuate 20,000 people when I had to kill them all? And it's not too long after that when Kenneth Branagh starts talking in much plainer English.
Well, yeah, and I like when he says it's something like
English, not German, and in British accents.
In British accents, exactly. There's a thing about how words mean things, with the evacuation thing, but also you have to remember that it's being written down and will be remembered in the future. Like, this will eventually be history, so you got to write it down as evacuation because it sounds softer. When looked back on.
Yeah, because you're trying to rewrite history as you're creating it in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, that stuff's really cool.
Which is maybe kind of weird if they're hoping nobody will know this meeting happened.
Yeah.
And so I kept wondering how much of it was for, the benefit of anybody that would learn about what we're talking about at some point. Like, we keep couching everything in secrecy, but there's also a lot of talk about how the cat is more out of the bag with Germany at large than anybody here really wants to admit. But, like, how much of it is because of that, and how much of it is for the sake of the few people in the room that may or may not be dissenters? Like, I feel like, at least for the purposes of the film, and then I'll get to potential criticisms, I guess, but for at least the purposes of the film, it seemed like maybe the meeting was just to feel some of the top brass out and figure out how many of them were really going to go along with this, and what it would take to get them all to raise their hands at the end and say, yeah, we're all okay with this. Because, and that's the stuff that's most dramatized, is the idea that there is very much dissent at all, and it's not played up as hard as I might have expected it to be. Much more subtle for a Hollywood kind of thing. I mean, it's a TV movie, but like, I might have expected a thing like this to be much more sensationalized, where you'd have the guy who's kind of advocating much more for the Jewish people than anybody else here won't outright say, I see them as equals, I don't think that we should, excise them from our community. There's this one guy, he's the only person there that's really advocating for the Jewish people. Everybody else that is against the final solution is for much more practical reasons. Like you were mentioning the guy who was writing the laws and was like, it's not that he has any love for the Jews, and he talks about that, and you can tell that that's true. That's one of the most messed up things in the movie. There's just better ways to do this, and we're ruining the credibility of our system.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he cared about.
Oh my god, I'm blanking on the word. Not castrate people, but basically, yeah, like, so they can't have children. I don't know. I'm completely blanked on that.
Yeah, I am now too. That you've done that. Sterilize.
Sterilize. Thank you. Yeah, they have like an X-ray thing that they want to put in desks.
Yeah. That whole thing is messed up. And then we get so like Branagh goes from couching everything in nicer language to eventually just getting real crass and callous about it and saying it exactly the way it is. And I wonder if it actually went that far in that meeting. But again, it's super compelling, the way it's handled in the film, and feels more or less believable. It's that line you gotta walk, right, between telling a good story and giving us the history as it is. And put a pin in that, because I'll get back to that. Because that's where what little criticism I have of this movie, and it's a little bit of a question mark. I kind of have, but I read part of, I didn't have time to read all of it, a really good, from what I've read of it so far, scholarly paper on this topic that was written only 3 years ago. And it is, I put a link in the description so you can click on it and read it, and I really recommend that you do that if you're interested in this material historically at all. It's by a writer called Alex J. Kay, and he wrote an article called Speaking the Unspeakable, the Portrayal of the Wannsee Conference in the Film Conspiracy. And he talks about that character, what is his name? I'm saying character, the real life person played by an actor in this movie, Wilhelm Kritzinger. And that guy apparently was not a straight out voice of dissent in this meeting, but they needed somebody for the audience. At least he suggests, and I agree with this, that first of all, you've got to have some kind of conflict in your movie, even though this isn't a traditional narrative in the sense that there's, like a character with like a real arc, in the real standard simple traditional sense. I mean, in a way, everybody gets an arc in the sense that you see, like, whether or not people are these leaders in this meeting are going to, like, speak their mind or allow their minds to be changed, and then by the end of the movie, everybody feels either they're not changing at all, and they either feel compelled to stick to their guns, or they feel kind of forced to pretend like they have an opinion they don't have. And so everybody comes to a consensus at the end, but not necessarily because they believe it. It's almost the antithesis to 12 Angry Men, which is a film that I could not stop thinking about while watching this movie, and it has a really similar structure in a lot of ways. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't, no.
Okay, 12 Angry Men is one of my absolute favorite movies. I put it on my top 20, I believe, favorite movies of all time list that I made a few years ago. And it, too, is a closed-room drama. You could almost call this 12 Angry Nazis, and I think there may be that same number of characters. I was trying to count at the end, because I didn't think to do this until the very end of the movie. When everybody gets up and leaves, there are, maybe it's 13, because I think there's 6 chairs on one side and 6 on the other, and then Kenneth Branagh was at the head. I think. And so it's almost the same number, too, which is really interesting. But 12 Angry Men, if you're not familiar, it's a real famous movie. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen that. Is about a jury that is trying to come to a consensus about whether or not the defendant in a case murdered someone, of course. And at the start, it's like almost split down the middle, and a lot of arguments happen throughout the movie, and we learn a lot about each of these different characters and how they come to the initial feelings that they come to, and how superficial it might be, or how deep it might be. And then you get to the end of the movie, and finally everybody it comes to one decision, and they all feel actually like compelled. There's maybe some peer pressure that happens, but by the end, more or less, everybody actually believes in what they're saying with the verdict that they cast, and it's brilliant because it's just 12 guys in a room. It should be boring as sin, but it's not. It's fascinating. And this was that again, except entirely peer pressure, and not even peer pressure, but government pressure, military pressure. Me and my family might be murdered if we don't go along with this at the end. And So anyway, I don't know, maybe I enjoyed it more than you did because it was like one of my favorite movies, but done in a totally different kind of situation and
Mm.
context.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Speaking of favorite movies, I
Yeah.
wonder if Quentin Tarantino has seen this because the Stanley Tucci is like a whole thing about how most Germans like don't understand how Jewish people think. So like he like went and like trained under a Jewish person to kind of get into that mindset.
Oh
And
wow.
it's not a very similar thing. But the opening scene of Inglorious Bastards is Christoph Waltz like explaining how German soldiers don't understand how Jewish people think, but he does, and like that's why he's like good at hunting them. And I just wondered if he'd seen that because
Yeah.
they kind of start in a similar place.
No, that's a good
But
point, and I
it's
still need to see that movie. I haven't.
it's great. It's his masterpiece.
But yeah, so some creative license is taken. You would expect some of that. Kritzinger, like I said, was not. This is one thing that we know for sure, according to this article or this paper. From the minutes taken at the meeting, he was not a dissenting voice. He didn't really say anything, and it kind of gives them license to kind of work with him almost as like a blank slate. Like there's evidence apparently in his history that he might have thought the way he speaks in this movie, and I think it's kind of important that the the stuff that we get about him, like really feeling the way he does, is some of it. I mean, I guess it's at the table, but like him being pulled aside and all of that, that's stuff that you can kind of get away with because it wouldn't have been in the notes. You know what I mean? So you
No, of
can,
course.
again, kind of makes for some good drama, but it gives the audience somebody to latch onto. Where if it was just 12, 13 guys that all think Jewish people are inferior and need to go, it might be difficult to want to continue watching the film because you're not seeing any kind of humanity whatsoever. Now, I could see that as a take. Where like the point is these people have lost their souls, and there definitely is some of that in this movie, particularly when you get to the heavyset guy who, and I know that actor from comedies and stuff, but I think he was in one of the East Ventura movies, but you get even a place where he has a joke about like, well, if we're gonna get rid of them all, kill them all, can't we at least like have some of the women? Like there's some real screwed up like
Oh yeah.
inhuman stuff in this movie, and I don't feel like having a character that kind of provides that litmus test or whatever, or barometer, I guess is a better way to put it, like sugarcoats the movie too much. I think it's possible that that guy actually felt the way he does in the movie, with a little bit of the historical context I got from reading this paper, but there's no way to really know, right? So that is certainly creative license that they take. But apparently he was one of like the last people to sign off on a lot of the most screwed up stuff with all of this, and so like and he was real tight-lipped and kind of just went along with things. So that's why they did that with him. There's kind of like lesser important questions about the meeting that they kind of have to just pick a side and go with. Like there's apparently some question about whether or not the stenographer was male or female, because there's a in the some of the trials that happen after the war, because a lot of these people were of course tried as war criminals, and that's text we get on at the end of the movie. We find out like some of them were tried and convicted. Some of them managed to come out unscathed. Some of them, at least one of them, was executed. I think maybe a couple. I forget now. But anyway, apparently there was a secretary who claimed that she was there, but she's not mentioned in the notes, and there was a different male stenographer that was, so there's kind of the argument about whether or not she was even there, and so the movie goes with specifically just whatever was in the notes. And so the stenographer in the movie is male, but might not have been. Things like that.
Yeah, because with stuff like that, there's always going to be like a level of inference where you're never going to know exactly what happened because we weren't in the room. Like that's just kind of a part of history.
Yeah.
Like, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's where I find myself a little bit conflicted about the purpose of the movie. And this is where, like I said, what little criticism I have is there, and I don't know that there's any way around this. So I don't know how fair this is, but when I finished the movie, and especially after I read up on some things, I found myself wondering if the point was to try to create as, like, let me back up a second. Is the point of this to tell a story based on history? So like we're talking about with a lot of based on a true story things or biopics. Is it a fiction based on history? Or is this meant to be more of a academic or scholarly work that's trying to recreate events as close as possible to what really happened? Because what I'm seeing is kind of a mix of those things, where it's trying to kind of have its cake and eat it too. It seems to really want to be as accurate as possible, and again, it does the here's what happened to all these people thing at the end, which always suggests that you're wanting your audience to see this as history. And I always have a tough time with that, because you know that this can't be exactly what happened, and the filmmakers know that, and besides doing that at the end, they're not really claiming that it is, but it seems like it's much more interested in trying to at least come off like this is what really happened than it is in trying to create an entertainment as much as something like this can be that. But then, in order to be a compelling narrative, it has to take some of that license. So, I don't know, where do you land on that?
Yeah, I don't know, because it's obviously case by case.
But where do you land on it with this?
No, I know. That's what I'm trying to think about.
Sorry.
That. No, it's okay. I don't know, because I didn't do a lot of research into the actual event, so it's hard for me to like kind of have that bit that kind of separates it, where I go, okay, but that's not accurate. That's not accurate. I probably would have that more if I did read into it. So I guess like as of right now, I would have to say I'm probably more on the okay side of it. But I mean, that's just kind of how these movies go.
Well, and I mean, I always want to take a movie on its own terms and not feel like I have to know a lot about the real events or what was in a writer's head when he wrote it or what have you. But in this particular case, the movie itself seems to be inviting me to do research. And then when I do that, I find myself a little bit on the fence about some of the creative license. And the guy who wrote the paper that I've read part of seems to also be somewhat conflicted about it, where he's suggesting that the guy who is given a worldview and ideology that he may or may not have had, because we don't know enough about him, is maybe again necessary in order to keep the audience engaged, and he seems to even kind of like that choice. But at the same time, he also says that, and I agree with this, that the purpose of a work like this is partly, it seems, to invite an audience to read up on the subject. And the problem is, not everybody's going to. And in fact, most people aren't. So when you do that, I mean, it would be kind of tacky or weird and tacked on to, at the end of a movie like this, be like, okay,
go read a book.
We just try. We we just tried to make a compelling narrative out of this, but we didn't get it 100% factually accurate. You should probably go actually look up what really happened as close as we understand it. It's not an episode of Magic School Bus like where at the end there's the kid on the telephone where somebody calls in and is like, well, that's not actually, animals don't talk, and he's like, I know, but we're making a cartoon show.
Well, I want to see the Magic School Bus episode where they go to this meeting.
Oh man, if we'd had that, they would have played it in 8th grade, I think, where I went to school. I kept getting this feeling like what this movie almost wanted to do was be a documentary at the same time, and like have a voiceover narrative, and it's bookended with a voiceover narrative that kind of sounds like a documentary voice, that would explain what really happened at the meeting, but then would be intercut with this dramatization, like you see in a lot of documentaries. Mm-hmm. And how killer would that be if you're watching this documentary and then suddenly freaking Kenneth Branagh shows up?
Yeah, or almost like you have it's one of those documentaries where you have the narration at the start, and then you just play the audio tape if this were recorded, and then yeah, exactly, yeah, like one of those kinds of documentaries, like I don't know, like whatever, like the Ted Bundy one is that they did,
which I saw, but it's been a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same here.
Fidelio, I think the point is to highlight how horrible atrocities can be committed as the result of cold, mundane business decisions. That's absolutely right, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the movie is... So what I'm saying is it's absolutely effective at the emotions that it's trying to elicit and the truth it's mining in the human condition. That we as human beings are capable of this if we wall ourselves off from a whole group of people and we let someone tell us that they are lesser than we are. And it's also, of course, about how easy it might be because we have multiple historical examples of this, and it's not like we're past it. It's not like it can't still happen. Like this is still relevant. The possibility of a government of people in power convincing the populace of anything, and like that's the scariest thing about this is like the like it's the same thing as, I mean, it's not the same thing, but like there are periods in American history, of course, where certain beliefs or ideals or actions are considered un-American. And, like, you can do that with anything if enough people are behind you and listening to you, you get high enough in power, right? Especially if you have like a dictator kind of situation, like we did here. So, and by the way, I really appreciated that there wasn't any attempt to like somehow shoehorn Hitler into like a scene or something. I thought maybe that would happen, because at the end of the movie, it's totally possible that like the main general could get on a plane and then go to Hitler, and we've got the Hitler scene. Like I really appreciated that they didn't feel the need to do that, but
they could have had a scene where Kenneth Branagh walks out and sees a guy with a mustache, and he's like, "Oh, it's a sweet mustache. Hey, Adolf, I got this idea for you."
Like, we're trying to be that close to the actual events of the meeting, and then we break all of that by just having Hitler show up at the end. He's just there outside.
He's British.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying that it's absolutely effective at what it's saying about history and the human condition and what is possible to convince people of. And it's not until I started, like I said, looking into the thing that I questioned a little bit how much of the purpose was that, and how much of it was to try to be try to give us a historical actual account of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, now I'm interested to see the other movie that I forget who said in the chat.
I really want to see that now. Yeah,
just to see like how that would compare.
Yeah, I will probably look into that.
We'll see you guys next week for that one.
Well, I did it. I took us to 50 minutes on this. Sorry about that.
Oh my God.
I guess I had more to say about this than I thought I did. Austin, what else do you want to bring up with this?
I feel like I pretty much hit everything. Like it was, yeah, there's like a lot of just kind of like interesting like crap going on between all these people. That like real. Every time I learn about these Nazi fellas, I think I'm just not fans of them. At the end of the day, is just how I feel about it.
Well, I think it's important that everybody is allowed their own opinion and to come to their own feelings on a thing. But I'm pretty sure that that's what the movie was getting at, Austin. So
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So that was what we were all supposed to feel. That wasn't just my own
I
opinion.
don't think so. I don't think that was just you. No.
Oh, okay.
This is some of the best Branagh I've ever seen. I think he's just brilliant in this.
Yeah,
And
no, he does a good job, and I like Kenneth Branagh like
I
typically.
mean, I like him in everything, yeah. And
Yeah.
he won an Emmy for this, and I think deserved it.
Oh, okay, nice. I finally just saw the his like new stuff he's doing, the like Murder on the Oriental Express and Death on the Nile.
I love that movie, and I haven't seen the new one yet. But
I think Death on the Nile is like slightly better. But
really,
I do like both of
I'm
them.
glad to hear that. I was worried that maybe they dropped the ball on the second one, so I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, I watched them all on Easter. I watched them like back to back.
Oh, crazy!
Yeah, yeah, I'd never seen either. And my grandparents are like a really big Agatha Christie fans, and specifically that character. So like that's like all they talk about. And they were like so excited for Death on the Nile, and they watched that first one a lot. For whatever reason, completely missed it.
Weird. Yeah, I saw the first one in the theater, and
Yeah, I remember you and Eric reviewed it.
we did. Just fell in love with it. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, they just added Death on the Nile on Disney Plus like two
I know.
weeks
I keep
ago.
forgetting about it. I'm gonna have to watch that with my wife.
Yeah, no, I think you'll really like it. Like I said, I think it's like slightly better. They're pretty consistent though.
Well, anyway, I want to
That's a
thank
whole
Super
other
Billy for
review.
yeah, absolutely. I want to thank Super Billy for making us review this. I think it's absolutely worthwhile, and I think you should watch it if you haven't. But like you said, I'm interested to see that other movie and see if I still feel that after I've seen that. See if I agree with the person who left that comment. Okay, next time I'm actually not sure what we're doing. Because
Uh-oh.
Okay, so my notes are a little bit out of order for what we need to do for the next time, Austin. As far as like who put things in when, I've got one or two that I didn't make my list because they were given to me in places outside of Patreon, and I just realized it and they need to be added, and I haven't done that yet. So I actually don't want to announce next week yet, just in case I'm wrong on it, because I want to make sure that I get it in the correct order. So I'll try to make an announcement soon about what the next one is, so that people have a chance to watch it before we get there. So I don't know if the next thing is almost certainly going to be a movie or a TV thing and not a comic. I'm pretty sure. But beyond that, I don't actually know what we're doing yet, so I'll let you know soon. I wish I had thought to double check that before we did the video tonight, and I didn't because I was dealing with family stuff and whatever. But anyway,
You biffed it.
we'll be back again soon. And I say next week, next time. I don't know for sure if I'm gonna be doing videos next week. I may take next week off. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants right now, but I'll let everybody know soon. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again real soon with more stuff here on Geekvolution. And Austin and I are actually about to do a little, I don't even want to say marathon. We're gonna watch a couple episodes of Superman the Animated Series right after this. So anybody staying up real super late on a Tuesday, feel free to stick around and hang out with us to do that. And in the meantime, if you want to make a request for this program, for the ReQuest, $15 on tier on Patreon makes that possible. You only have to do it one time, and we'll add it to the list. But if you stick around at that tier, we will put you in the rotation. And we have about 3 to 4 months worth of people right now, so it'll be a little while when you put in a request, but don't worry, we'll get there. And anyway, a comic, a movie, or in a pilot of a TV show, those are the things that we'll do requests on. And thanks a lot for watching. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
We'll be back for more stuff on Toonie Tuesday today.
Anyway, you'll have to forgive him. It's the best he can come up with at midnight. Thanks again.
Canadian. It's Toonie Tuesday.
Oh, I don't even know what that means. Is that a thing?
Yeah, because our instead of like $1 and $2 bills, we have coins, and it's the loony and the toonie. So a lot of places will do Toonie Tuesdays where things are $2.
Idea. I thought you were just trying to come up with an alliteration that sounded good because we were doing a cartoon.
I just randomly just threw words.
Yeah, that's what I was like. All right. I can't be alone on this. Anyway,